A new report reveals a strong pro-Israel bias within the UK media. The portrayal of Israel's war on Gaza in the UK media has sparked concerns about bias and one-sided reporting. A recent study by the Centre of Media Monitoring reveals a consistent favouring of Israeli narratives over Palestinian perspectives.
I wonder if you do have to acknowledge the barbarity, the brutality of the attack on Israelis in southern Israel by Hamas before this can move forwards.
Oh, God. I mean, I can't believe I'm hearing the same thing over and over again. This is a preoccupation with the Western media because something happened to Israel for the first time in its history. Everybody's up in arms and its victims have to condemn themselves. Israel has been doing this to us for decades.
The report delves into extensive analysis of the first month of the war, examining over 180,000 video clips and approximately 26,000 articles from various British media outlets. Let's look into some of its findings. The report found that Palestinians have been dehumanized as people. Israeli politicians were rarely, if ever, challenged on statements where they've used dehumanizing language, such as calling Palestinians in Gaza human animals or saying that Palestinian children brought this upon themselves.
Are you seriously keep on asking me about Palestinian civilians? What's wrong with you? Have you not seen what happened? We're fighting Nazis.
Whilst media outlets should report statements by Israeli politicians, they should do so with the appropriate context and should refrain from using dehumanizing language themselves. Yet the report found that British media outlets have in fact frequently questioned the innocence of Gaza's people.
Gaza elected Hamas, and I think it's quite hard for somebody who has not been there, not looked people in the face, to understand how it can be that there's 2.2 million people who everybody says, majority of whom are not aggressive, don't want to be part of this, yet they elected what essentially is a terrorist death cult.
The blurring of lines which suggests that the population in Gaza shares the responsibility of Hamas's attacks as a result of an election that took place almost 2 decades ago, and in which the majority of today's population of the Strip did not vote, was promoted by many media personalities. According to the report, over 70% of the terms atrocity, slaughter and massacre were used in reference to the attacks against Israelis. And Israelis are about 11 times more likely to be referred to as victims of attacks compared to Palestinians. Israeli victims of Palestinian violence are killed while Palestinians mysteriously die. One notable example is from the Times newspaper in November 2023, when it wrote, Israelis marked a month since Hamas killed 1,400 people and kidnapped 240, starting a war in which 10,300 Palestinians are said to have died. Despite the United Nations and the Geneva Convention recognizing the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination, the Palestinian struggle has been undermined in the media, where some claim that the Palestinian fight against Israeli occupation is anti-Semitic and stems from an ancient hatred of Jews inherently rooted in Islam, a notion that is entirely false in the context of the ongoing conflict, and which deploys Islamophobia to undermine Palestinian narrative. Centre of Media Monitoring highlights the reaction of editor of Jewish News, Richard Farrer, who described the Hamas attack in the Express as "This is plain and simple historic Islamist bloodlust, passed down through the generations from birth. An ever-present cancer lurking in the shadows now stands fully exposed. Its medieval ambition shocking to the core, the genocide of the Jewish people." The Israeli perspective posits the 7th of October attacks as the onset of the current crisis, while Palestinians view them as the latest episode in an enduring struggle since the Nakba of 1948, the mass displacement of Palestinians and subsequent creation of the State of Israel, followed by Israel's occupation of more Palestinian land in 1967. When reporting on Israel's ongoing war on Gaza, the British media rarely provides the necessary context of the wider Palestinian struggle, or acknowledges the historical context vital for audiences to grasp the circumstances possibly leading to the 7th of October attacks.
When you call all Palestinians in the Gaza Strip human animals, children of the darkness, and then you unleash this indiscriminate bombing of civilians, children, women, hospitals, schools, homes, at least 42% of homes in Gaza have been destroyed. This is clearly a deliberate attempt to kill as many
just to push back on you again a little, just to push back on you again, we have to remember that this war was triggered by the events of October 7th, when 1,400 Israelis were killed. Israel has 229 hostages that they have to think about inside Gaza.
Disregarding the decades-long occupation, hostilities or aggression meted out by Israel in the preceding days and weeks, and in fact years and decades, is inaccurate. The increased violence in the occupied West Bank, for instance, where more than 234 Palestinians, including children, had been killed in 2023 before 7th of October, was rarely covered. The number of Palestinians killed is often called into question, but the same standard is not applied to Israel's casualty numbers, despite it revising down the number several times.
And so we hear these death toll coming out of Gaza, and we always say this is the health ministry that is controlled by Hamas. So make of that what you will when it comes to those death figures.
The brutality of 7th of October is well documented. However, several alarming cases of alleged brutality by Hamas fighters on that day have been headlined and presented as fact, when in fact they were not true. The widely reported stories of beheaded children or 40 dead babies were never verified. Despite this, they were reported as fact in many British outlets. Throughout months of relentless Israeli attacks and a massive death toll of Palestinian women and children, biased pro-Israel coverage within the UK media continued despite evidence suggesting false Israeli claims on various incidents. At a time when tens of thousands of Palestinians have been killed and many more risk death as a result of starvation caused by Israel's siege on Gaza, it is ever more important to ensure balanced and accurate reporting of the events on the ground by British media. A clearer understanding of the situation may lead to an end to the bloodshed and ultimately peace.